Our next speaker is Brunel. So in the first recommendation, stewardship, like was talked about, means many things to many different people. And it's viewed differently by the conservationists, by the general public, and by agricultural producers like myself. It is important that a strategy is developed that encompasses all these ideas and that means something to all these people, but will work as a group as a whole. So it needs to be a balanced approach and acceptable to all who are involved. And I think the consultation of everybody involved is important so that way we get this right and it can move forward in a positive manner. As a producer, when recommending on the needs to establish measurable things for EG&S, as someone who works on the landscape and has tried, many things over many generations, as a conservationist, as a producer, and as a working landscape manager, it's important to recognize past actions, not set them aside and start from scratch today and move forward. I think the things that have been done, if you look at the zero-till practices adopted and things like that, those are important steps and things that should be recognized so we can move forward and build upon these. And that's something that producers like to be recognized for, and not just saying, well, from this day forward, you're doing good. We've been doing good for many years. It's important to develop a scale to rate the activities that are being implemented, and they also have to be acceptable to those who are on the landscape. And reasonable baselines are also important, that we can discover where we've come from and where we're going, and as the changes are implemented, how they impact things. And those are very important as producers, because we can see what we're doing is making a difference and changing in a positive direction. By assembling some analysis of the important stewardship practices, putting a price tag on these activities is extremely important. As a producer, we do a lot of these things, because it's the right thing to do. But in economic times, when input costs and commodity prices rise, we look at ways to improve our bottom line. And as most of you will have, known from past histories, that farming is a slim margin type of business, and there's always has to be a balance of what will be able to sustain my business and improve my business, and what is good for the land that I work on, that my family lives on, the water that we drink. So there needs to be a balance, and we're firm believers that we should be rewarded for some of the services we provide to the general public. In the analysis, it's important, like I said earlier, that all stakeholders are involved in this analysis. I think, we talked about how everybody needs to get together, form opinions, work together, some compromise out there to develop these practices so they're acceptable to those who are funding them, those who are implementing, and those who are in some ways demanding that we do these stewardship practices. I think one important factor, and this is, as a young farmer, this is something that I see as an important thing. As an intergenerational transfer from one generation to the next on a farming operation, these are times where these different practices are and can be implemented. A different mindset, a different way of thinking, a different way of looking at it, possibly more education by the younger generation, and an open mind to try something new. And so this is a great opportunity as generations transfer operations from one to the other to make these changes, or to at least look at implementing changes on farms. The balance between human, economic, and ecological health and how they are related is very important. Like I said earlier, when I look at my operation and I spend time in my fields and know them fairly intimately, whether I go around a pothole or whether I can go through it makes a difference. If I go around it, you may say, well, it doesn't cost you anything, but the cost of seed and chemical and overlap causes extra expense than, say, just going straight through it. So you have to realize from a person working on the landscape how these things affect the decisions that we make. And the financial viability of these practices are important, and whether they're funded or whether they're done voluntarily, I think, you know, that's the give and take that we have to deal with as managers. We feel that it's important to have a network or a clearinghouse type model for organizations to show what they have for programs out there. And so that way it connects everyone who is interested, whether it's the general public who is looking at what is being done, or whether it's producers on the landscape that want to know what they can do or what program or what projects that may be out there that they could implement. Establish criteria for these programs or projects based on a point system, so you know what needs to be done as someone who may implement them, what needs to be done, and what I have to do to achieve, you know, the satisfaction of the person who is managing these projects. And a maintenance strategy, I think, is important. It's not just important to implement the program for a short period of time and then expect it to continue into the future forever. I mean, if land changes hand or if production practices change, it's important to encourage people to maintain good stewardship processes and practices, and these things will evolve and change as we move forward, but it's important that these things are maintained so we don't just see a flash in the pan activity and then it just falls off the table. For us, this is a key point and a key recommendation, the need for funding from governments and other sources. We've discovered in our ALICE project in the province of Manitoba that this is very important to implement changes or to have a successful project and program, and to have a national system that there is funds out there is very important. In a lot of ways, the different levels of governments have made commitments, whether it's greenhouse gas reductions or whatever, and they're requiring or asking of us to help them meet these targets, and we feel that it's important that we are compensated in some way. And as we found with the environmental farm plan process in Manitoba and I think across this country, that an incentive approach for implementing beneficial management practices is a very good way to entice or give incentives to producers to change their production habits, and it's easier to lead them to water than to chase them with a stick, and producers would rather see incentives than regulatory measures, and there's always a need for some regulatory measures, but an incentive-based approach is definitely a very positive one. And on the last recommendation, we don't really see a great need for another task force. We'd rather see something happen, some action taken. I guess we'd rather see the studies happen and baselines achieved and discovered as we move forward by implementing projects. Projects can easily be built upon and start at a lower level and build on as we move forward. But we'd rather see some action, and we feel that action should be taken as soon as possible. And as producers, I think we're ready to take action and move forward on these actions. If governments are committed to this initiative, then funding should be put in place, and not when, but sooner than later. I think initiatives should be flexible enough to be built upon as we move forward and learn more, and the results of these programs and projects are put in place. And as we study these, we'll learn what we've done right and what we've done wrong, but I think it's important to move forward and learn as we go. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I'll be around for questions later. Thank you.
Our last panelist also is heavily involved in stewardship issues. Virginia Potter,